my name is Pavan Davra, and welcome to Precious Brain Lab, where we talk on brain development, brain disorders, and brain connectivities. In this episode, we're going to talk on children's and how children's make a huge difference as they grow. In our lives, children are very, very important, and they decide the future of not only for the family, but for the nation as well, for the country. As we all know that how children develop and how they grow, but we still need more information to understand how all of this process happens inside the brain. In my Precious Brain Lab, we're going to discuss the most important chapter of children is their development. We all need to understand that every child needs a proper care, proper nurturing, well education, and also the part of their food intake and their habits. So every parent's dream is that their child should be successful, self-independent, and not be dependent on their parents, or codependency. So let us try and understand about children's, and let us see what exactly neuroscience has to talk on all of this. So as you can see that only the fittest survive. Why children development, particularly from birth to 5 years, is a foundation for a prosperous and sustainable society. It's very important to understand this concept. As in terms of neuroscience, only the fittest survive means the child birth is very important. If the birth is done in the right way, the child develops pretty good with time, especially at a cognitive level, the motor functions and all of this. But what exactly does it mean is that from birth to 5 years is a developing stage. The stage where the child develops is from birth to 5 years. These years are very, very crucial for the child. If the child development is not done pretty well in these years, you're going to find several different problems in child as they grow. This is the reality of child development. So you cannot blame that my child goes to the school and now he's not doing well in class. That's not the case. The case begins right from birth to 5 years from birth. So these are the stages of children that we need to understand. If we do not give them proper care, proper attention, proper nurturing, good food, healthy environment, the child is going to grow into several different problems. And so this is where the neuroscience begins with, that the birth of the child is as important as you take care of the child. So the beginning is from 0 to 5 years, from birth to 5 years. Now, as you go further to understand that till 5 years is really important, then after 5 years is also decides that how the child is going to behave right after 5 years. It'll show you that clarity about the children's behavior, understanding, and how it's developing, the part of learning and memory. So if we get to this point, then we understand that how does all this happen from birth to 5 years. Even this is important to understand before we go further beyond 5 years. So speaking of child's development, As you can see, in the first few years of life, more than 1 million new neural connections are formed every second. After this period of rapid proliferation, connections are reduced through a process called pruning so that brain circuits become more efficient. Sensory pathways like those for basic visions and hearing are the first to develop, followed by early language skills and higher cognitive functions. So the most important thing that happens at the child's birth, let's just talk about the child's birth. At the very beginning, the child develops, it's not movable much, it's just there, and it's really soft and gentle as the child takes birth. You have to be very protective for at least for 15 to 20 days right after birth. It's very sensitive. If you do anything cause damage to the child, any outside interferences, or if you take outside to a loud noise or a lot of sun, or towards pollution or any sort of things outside for the first 15 days, if you do anything of that, then the child's development is going to have a major problem. It's going to affect their growth factor. So once that cycle is over, then the development of hands and legs. You must have seen as they, as they grow a little bit, after 2, 3 months or 4 months, you will see that they start to use their hands and legs. They start to use it, and then you do all kinds of massage and all of that to the child. You give that, it's really essential for their bones and for their body. So you give them good oil massage, and they get really stronger. So the first thing that develops is movement of the muscles, not any cognitive level. Just the hands and legs are moving. And then you hear some sound, like they try to bring out some sound. So that's the early development stages. Now, as they grow, then what happens? Then you will see that they start to move with their hands and legs. They'll try and move around, but they cannot stand. Like you've got to hold them and you got to make them walk. But there comes a time when they move their hands and legs, and not only that, now they start to stand on their feet and they start to walk. This is a very crucial stage where the development begins of a child on a deeper level. Now, as this grows with time, then what happens? Several neurons, those who did not fail to synapse, there are billions of neurons, fail to connect with different neurons, different activities of the brain. They fail to connect. So those neurons are gone. They're out. They're finished. So the ones only that synapse, that remains in the body. Now, as those synapses, they start to get stronger and stronger with time, and the child starts to move around and do things efficiently. This is what exactly it does as the child grows. So this is the beginning stages of the child, then how it is completely changing the biological concept right from the birth to up to 5 years. So now that we understand the connections, the most important thing that develops at the very early stage is vision and hearing. Very, very sensitive. Very, very sensitive from birth to 5 years. The vision and the sound, the hearing, they're the sharpest. They're so sharp and sensitive. You say anything, it can hurt them. It is so sharp. Imagine, you must have seen the movies and you must have experienced it when the child is born, and immediately when the parents fight, the child starts to cry and shout and get loud. and they get scared, they get afraid. Why? Because they cannot take that. That sound is so horrible. I'll give an example. Imagine you're standing close to a big speakers, large speakers, like the speaker that is something like 7 feet tall speakers, and you're at 5 feet or 6 feet tall. So that speaker is bigger than you. Now, what you do is you get close to that speaker and you touch your ears to that speaker and play that sound on a loud, full volume. It's going to hurt your ears so badly you want to run away from there. You cannot take that. That is what happens to the children's brain when that sound goes in from birth to 5 years, from a very small, they've taken a birth, they don't understand anything, but the sound is causing problem, disturbance. They cannot take it. So you have to run away from there. That is what happens to the children's. And this is the exact problem with the birth and understanding of children's, that we have to put up a lot of effort to make them understand. So this is why I say that when the child is born, you have to be very, very sensitive. You need to have peaceful environment, especially for the eyes and for the ears. Anything you do in that age is going to affect their genetics. It's going to affect their development process. They wouldn't have a better understanding and learning towards in school or in life. It'll be rigid. They'll not understand much. And that's the biggest challenge, that we all need to learn and memorize and understand on a very deeper level about children and their development. Which is why I say that when you do certain things, you have to be very, very careful. So now that we have understood about all of this, let us try and understand how does it affect the brain. How does it affect the brain? How does all of this happen inside the children? This is very important to learn in the growth factor. That if you want to learn something about children, then you have to understand how does all this happen inside the brain. So as you can see, initially the nervous system develops more neurons than will actually survive. Axons of the synaptic nervous system survive only if they reach a target cell that releases to them nerve growth factor. Otherwise, they die in a process called apoptosis. Apoptosis also occurs in brain. Parental exposure to alcohol increases apoptosis. This is very, very important to learn. How many parents drink alcohol? Children are not developed fully. It is the reality. Children will not develop fully if they are drinking alcohol. I'll give an example how sensitive it is. Just give me a minute. Here is this. I've got this cotton. This cotton is so sensitive. It is light. It is really soft right now. But if I pour this in water, it will become dense and heavy. It'll become dense and heavy, and it'll be not come in use as much as a dry cotton will. Can you do much thing with a wet cotton? No. You have to use a dry cotton to utilize it to its fullest. If you use a wet cotton, that's definitely for something like, if there's excessive bleeding, then you put a spirit on it, alcohol, and you wipe on it. So chances of getting infection is really less. But This is the cell of a baby, this cotton. If you pour alcohol during pregnancy, a woman does, the cell, they start to die. I'm sorry to say this, but it's going to happen. Because the cells are so sensitive to these chemicals that the children will start to die. Not only that, let's say how they die, changes in their facial expressions, facial structure. If they're born, then they'll have problems in learning and memorizing. They'll have problems in, somewhere in their movements in their hands and legs. There are several different problems that's going to come up during their birth. Even excessive bad environment can lead to autism. Bad environment, chemically based food that goes inside. They said, we never had any autism, but our children has. That's because something went inside and destroyed their genetics, their development that was supposed to happen. Those cells change the expressions from growing to defensive, so the growth factors stop, and the child turned autistic. What are you going to do then? This is the reality. And it's not about alcohol. It's about several different things. Chemically based food, processed food, eating junk food at the wrong time during pregnancy. There are many things involved. And it could be anything that goes inside and can change the expression of your genes. So it is advisable that whenever you have, when you're going to be pregnant, you should have home-cooked healthy food with healthy fats. Exercise, eat well, sleep well. Stay away from gadgets and have a healthy environment around you. This is why it's about children's. So now that we've come to this point, let us try and understand a little deeper. Now, apart from this, what happens after this? So as you can see that there is this, after axons reach their targets based on chemical gradients, the postsynaptic cells adjust the connection based on experience, accepting certain combinations of axons and rejecting others. This kind of competition among axons continues throughout life. So, what you're going to do, that's going to be like, it's going to have synapses, and what you're not going to do is going to get away from there. But what are we talking about? That experience is in children, the entire neurons are actually working on it from birth to 5 years. They all are working together. It's not just about one, all of them. They're connecting. It doesn't make any sense. If you tell them to lift up this, they lift this up, but they don't know what to do. I'm talking about young birth, where they're sitting down and they cannot even walk, but they're holding this pen and they'll put in their mouth, they'll do something like this, they'll do anything with the pen, but they don't know what they're doing. So the entire synapses are going on. They're trying to learn. They're using their synapses for several times. They're repeating it for days, for months. Millions and millions of time they repeat that until they come to the point that I gotta hold the pen like this, nothing to do like this, but I gotta hold like this and I gotta write with the pen. Millions of repetition, then they get this. So now that we understood that the children's synapses are more towards everything, so it is the parents' responsibility to teach the kids to repeat good habits. I'm going to explain you everything. Wait. Repeat good habits. It is parents' duty, not teachers, not anybody. For the 0 to 5 years, it's the parents' duty. I'm going to be very clear. Because why? There is a reason. Connection between mother and the child. Connection between father and the child is more than the teachers. And they have deep affection in these times from birth to 5 years. If whatever the parents do, the child will do it. So you have to understand how to take care of this. Then comes, we'll try and understand even deeper more about this. Let us move ahead. What happens after this? So as you can see, in the first few years of life, more than 1 million new neurons connections are formed every second. I kept saying this is going to happen. And after this period of rapid proliferation, connections are reduced through a process called pruning, so the brain circuits become more efficient. Sensory pathways, those for basic vision and hearing, are the first to develop, followed by language skills and higher cognitive functions. Who is responsible for hearing and visioning at the very first age development of child? It is the parents, the surrounding of the environment. If you have a better understanding with your child, the child grows pretty well. If the understanding between the child and the parents are disturbed, they can never learn in life for good. They're going to have problems, mark my word. The beginning stages are very sensitive. Communication between the child and the parents are more responsible than going to a kindergarten or jumping to a school. That's a different thing, where the child undergoes some trauma when they go into school. The teacher beats the hell out of the child goes into trauma. That's different. I'm talking about the developing stages where the child is at home, not in kindergarten, not in school, but with the parents 24/7. That's the stage what we need to do with the child. It's very sensitive. This matter does not just occur. It needs to be taken action. This decides the future of the child, how the parenting is taken from zero, I would say from birth to 2 years. I say that. And even neuroscience says this. I'm going to explain you that, how this all happens. But then, apart from this, apart from this, what else can we understand towards children's? Because now that we knew that the parenting is important, then there's something more also important on the surface. We still need to understand on a deeper level. So, as you can see that in the chart, love and overprotective. This is, I'm talking about the very young age where the child is very young. Parental exposure to alcohol and different kinds of chemicals. Then comes abusive parents and dysfunctional equality. All of this is result in gene expressions. This is all about parenting. No school, no kindergarten. I'm talking about parents strict. How can you make your child grow better in life? How can you give them better performance and understanding? So, love and overprotectiveness results in problems in emotional expressions, and also afraid to open up. The child does not open up. I'll explain you in the later slides as well, but I'm just giving you a little example right now. The overprotectiveness, then the child does not open up. So let's say the child does something and you keep stopping them from doing things. Oh, no, 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 he's going to get hurt. Oh, no, don't do this. He's going to get hurt. Oh, what are you doing? Stop this. He's going to get hurt. Oh, don't do this. In everything, whatever the child does, and you just stop the child, then that's the biggest problem. The child will never learn anything. The child growth is stopped. Genetic expressions will change. And in fact, of becoming more wiser to understand, the child growth factor stops here. Communication becomes weaker as they grow. So let's say if they grow and they get young, like, they've come out of their college and now they want to go for a job. They repeat numerous times with their family. Will I get this job? I've done everything. Will I get this job? I've done everything. Then the parents say, oh no, my son, you'll get it. You've done very good. Don't worry, you'll get it. And when they get that job, they go to that place, they're scared. They don't know how to work. They're really scared. And even one word said here and there by boss, they start to cry. They're not going to feel good. They're not going to work well. So where does this come from? This comes from overprotectiveness right from the birth. And if you keep continuing to do that, then even in school they'll have problems. In high school, then in college, university, throughout their life, they're going to have problems to open up. Until somebody comes into their life and change the perspective of their brain. But this can be changed, if they get to the part of counseling or, getting to workshops where they can have them self-development. So they can do the thing and they can change it. But that's only with their will. If they have a strong will to change, it is going to happen. If they don't have, they cannot. Abusive parents stops the child from growth. Very, very important in this chapter. I've come from a place of trauma, so I know what exactly that is. But I changed my expressions because I knew where the problem was and I did it. I'm free from all of that problem. But abusive parents means you cannot grow well in life. You cannot even do well in life. Because abusive parents means your growth factor stops. You get into addictions, you get into bad relationships, you get into places where instead of finding love, you find a lot of physical intimacy. And you get into bad relationships where addictions are involved in it. So abusive parents change the expressions of the genes pretty bad. Because when the parents abuse, let's say they're not doing anything to you because you're very young. Let's say it's been almost 1 year from birth. Like you're only 1 year old. Then what happens? You start to see your eyes and your ears. And you start to cry every now and then whenever the parents are fighting. This stops the growth of the child. They get into that phase of a lot of information goes inside. They have very bad experience. They cannot open up in school, college, or even in class. And that stops the growth of the child. They don't do well. And that's what the biggest problem. Expressions of genes changes at the very early ages if the parents are not normal. So that needs to be understood, that we need to stop the parents from abusing in front of the child. And please, parents, don't fight. This is my request. Don't fight when you have a child. You should always stay calm and talk and solve the problem. Sit down and solve the problem. Don't fight, don't abuse, and don't do anything. Create a peaceful environment for the first 5 years. Let the child grow first. This is the mindset of the parents should be. Then comes dysfunctional equality. Why do I say dysfunctional? You must have seen that there are 2 children born. Generally what happens in a lot of cases, where I've seen it a lot, where if they have a female child, then the father wants a male child, a boy. If you have a baby girl, I need a boy. Then what happens to the baby girl? They have a bad impression that I am a girl and I'm no use for my family. I'm just a girl. And they want a boy. And this is where the parents have dysfunctional equality. They don't understand that it's a child. It's not something like a female or male. If the parents don't understand this, they should never have a child. A child is a child. Whether it's a boy or a girl, they both are equal and they should be treated equal. And if they don't do that, then imagine what's going to happen to that girl. That poor girl is suffering. And she'll suffer all her life. Who's responsible? Parents. Don't blame anybody. You should treat a baby girl equally. Forget about boy and a girl. Let's say two boys. One is elder and one is younger. Then what do? They feed the young more and the elder later. In this condition also, the elder son, they don't grow well. They don't grow well. They don't do well in life as well. Now I'm the oldest. I have to sacrifice everything. Then why should I, do this and do that? So the growth factor also stops. Dysfunction and equality means the most hardest thing the parents does is they don't pay attention equally to two children's. And this is where they need to understand. So all of these factors play an important role. Now when we say alcohol and different kinds of chemicals, like I said, these two are very dangerous for the children. Never drink, even after the birth of a child. Stay healthy and give healthy habits to the children. Because if you're going to drink, then the child will grow up and he's also going to start to drink. That's because they've saw everything during their childhood. And they'll do the same activities. They'll go to their father's room, they'll pick up the alcohol, they'll take a little bit, they'll start to drink. Finish. Life is over. The child's growth is gone, finish. They'll do all kinds of rubbish. They'll go out, they'll drink, they'll smoke, they'll go for parties, they'll have a lot of sex, they'll finish their life. No ambition, no goal, nothing. Just do all kinds of things, non-productive, and destroy your life. This is all coming from parents. Then we'll try and understand what are we supposed to do when it comes to understanding the brain functions. Now that we've come to the part of this, we're going to finish up. I'm going to try and wrap up pretty soon, but I'm going to do it really quick this time. So now that we've come to this point, what about learning and memory? We've come to this point, right? Learning and memory. Very important. Every child should do best in class. We all want this, isn't it? Best means the best. I want my child to do well in class. But how this is all possible? First, we're going to understand the connectivity. So that'll bring a broader perspective of what I want to make you understand. In a very, I would say, an experiment done by KCBJ, one of the wonderful development neurobiology of cognitive control and motivational system. She has done many works. KCBJ has done a lot of work on development. I mean, I've seen her work, and that is why I wanted to bring this up about one of her findings that she's done. So in one of the research that she's done wonderful work, and I want to show you this, that as you can see, ventral striatal cortex and prefrontal cortex, which is PFC, interactions across development. Note, deeper color indicates greater regional signaling. The line represents functional connectivity with a solid line indicating mature connections and a dotted line indicated immaturity. Reprinted from Current Opinion in Neurobiology, Volume 20, Somerville, LH, which is KCBJ, Developmental Neurobiology of Cognitive Control and Motivational System. I really love her work. I'm a fan of several different scientists, and I keep my eye on them when they come up with new articles, new experiment articles. I just like to read all of that, and I just say, you're doing a great job. But anyways, let us continue to look at that slide that I'm talking about. Now, the biggest region that comes to connection in learning and memory is striatum and prefrontal cortex. If you see in the children right at the beginning, the communication is immature. Like I said, the first from 0 to 5 years, you would see this is the problem. Prefrontal cortex and striatum will have very weaker connections. Then comes adolescence, where you would see that connections are getting stronger, but they're not fully mature. It still needs maturity from prefrontal cortex, but the working memory is working good. If you see there's a dotted line between the prefrontal cortex to striatum. From striatum to prefrontal cortex, it is clearly shown, which means they have better working memory, which means they can learn well. And when they learn well, they'll understand pretty well about the connections. They'll able to memorize pretty well. But understanding will take more time. They will understand, let's say if they have sex education in adolescents, then they'll understand the part of what is sex and this and that. But they still want to experience it. Even after understanding that it's not safe, they'll still do it. Example, they won't use condom. They'll have sex without condom. They'll do all kinds of, activities during sex that can also damage the girl's genital areas. So I'm just giving an example. And even, not even sex, let's say alcohol, drugs, gambling, there are many other things. These things are immaturity for them because prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, so they should not do such activities. And I wouldn't recommend that during adolescence that they should be really kept in strict environment. And once you cross right above 25 years of age, then you would see the maturity develops in adults. You see the third one, striatum and prefrontal cortex. You would see that prefrontal cortex is much darker and striatum is lighter because the maturity is fully grown after 25 years of age. That means you're able to understand and you know what is right and wrong in your life right after 25 years of age. So that's what it does to your brain. Now in all these three, that you would see that the connection of striatum in the adolescents is pretty much higher than in children. Now striatum in adolescents means we need to be very careful in whatever information we give during that age is going to affect their lives, because they're going to do all that nonsense if any wrong information given to them, especially sensitive cases like alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, high speed like cars, motorbikes, going on crazy vacations with their friends, and you got to keep a watch on them. So you got to keep a strong watch on adolescents, from children to adolescents. That is very, very important in these ages. If you don't keep a watch on them and their activities on their mobile phone, they'll do any kinds of nonsense, especially if they're learning about computers. Then watch out for dark webs in adolescents. They can go to dark web and they'll do all kinds of nonsense sitting in there. Video games can also lead to excessive addictions. So you got to keep a watch on these terms if you want your child to be healthy and develop fully from prefrontal cortex. So now that we've come to this point, we'll further more understanding about children's. So now that we learned all of this, let us move ahead and try and understand even more. So early life child development, parenting, environment, behavior problems, gene modification, or hereditary malnutrition. These are the conditions where the child does not learn in class. Imagine there are 50 students sitting in class and they're all just about the same age. Why people don't learn, why students don't learn at the very same time, like all of them learn, because of these problems. Early life child development was not good. Exposure to bad environment, parenting was not good, behavior problems where let's say if the parenting is not done well, the environment is not good, child behavior will have problems in their behaviors, and that behavior problems comes from genetic modification or hereditary or malnutrition. These conditions are the biggest problems where the child does not learn and understand anything that you teach them. But then what after this we need to learn is very, very important, because once they reach to class, then what we need to understand more after this, because child development is also important, but inner development is also important to learn. So let us get on further with more deeper understanding. So as you can see that the vision and hearing are the two components of the child learning process. So let's say if they're exposed to the environment in their early ages, whatever they learn is going to be very sensitive for that information. They will also repeat it at a very young age. Let's say if they get to the first grade to the fifth grade. The first grade to fifth grade is very, very important. Counseling should be done at these ages. Counseling means counseling with the parents is very important. School should have conduct programs for parents from 1st to 5 years of age. They should have counseling to their parents so they can make them learn when the child is home what can be done when they're at home, because home is home for them. They will do anything they want, and they should understand that if that vision is not corrected at home, then in school it's going to sound really worse. So what are the three things that we need to understand in all of this? Dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. These three components are very important for children. These three chemicals are important for learning and behavior. The problem is when it is imbalanced due to parenting problem and not enough exposure to enriched environment. Yes, this is what I need to make you understand. Enriched environment. I kept saying this because children need to learn more about that environment. If that environment is not good, the child development is also not good. They're going to suffer really hard. So we need to learn that we need to give child a better environment. And if you don't get a good environment, they're going to suffer really hard. These are the real problems with parenting. Now that we've come to this point, I want to make you learn even deeper about this enriched environment with clear understanding. You'll understand even more better. So as you can see that there is over the first 2 years of life, networks of neurons become increasingly complex and interconnected. If you see all birth, first month, third month, 15 month, 24 months, look at that capacity of the neurons. You would see increasing of the connectivity, complex, increasing of interconnected, complex. It's too much. Means 2 years, 24 months. In 2 years, look at that neurons. Now look at the bottom, what I want to make you explain. Effect of a stimulating environment that if you see a jewel fish reared in isolation develops neurons with fewer branches. B, a fish reared with others have more neurons branches. So between the A and B, you would see there is a difference in the neurons growth. Why is that? That is because if the child exposure to the environment is not good, the neurons development, the dendrites, the neurons, they're not going to have a good connectivity, which means they're going to have lesser volumes of understanding towards their environment. They will not learn well. They're going to have late learning, late understanding. Their emotional level, understanding, all of that learning and memorizing delays the process. This is the reality. There is no difference between animal and human. That was done the test to understand if the child's development is good in a rich environment. If it's not done in the right way, then this is what happens to the children. Please try to understand. This is very important for children, for them to learn and memorize. So now that we've come to this point, we will start to learn even more on understanding about the class. We understood that because there are many problems why children don't learn in class, then we're going to learn even more deeper why is it so. Why is it so? I'm sorry about my tongue, it's so heavy. It gets heavier. It's about 46 minutes of video, and I'm going to continue doing more. I want to make it. So let us try and understand. Now that we've come to this point, as you can see, that the environment and parenting plays an important role in a child's life. When they are exposed to learning and memory, the genes, brain activity, and neurotransmitters all will stay healthy. If exposed to limitation in behavior or parents, communication and caring is not enough, can cause problems in future development. So if the environment and the parenting is done well, then if you see that vision that shows A, the child is in the class, he sees that A letter goes back. It processes inside the child is able to recognize, he'll say A. It is A, alphabet A. But then what happens? If the parenting is not done well, they look at A, but that vision where that A is giving that information back to the children, that vision, it's an impairment. That A will not give them the conclusion to the child that it's letter A. They will laugh, they'll do something, they'll distract themselves, but they will not say that that's letter A. Why? Because the development is not good. That's the problem. If the development is not good, then the child problem becomes denser, and it's impossible for the parents to take care of the child. Now that we learned about the part of development, let us try and understand the behavior of the child, because we also need to understand the part of the behavior of that child. Child behavior is also very important to understand at a very early age. So, as you can see, that compared to adults, adolescents tend to be impulsive and even centered more on present pleasures than future prospects. In most cases, risky behaviors in adolescents probably reflect an increased drive for excitement more than lack of ability to inhibit impulses. If you look at that behavior, you would see that the child is super excited. It doesn't make any sense, like, it's going to hurt him or not, but he just wants to do it. It's quite impulsivity shown there. The mother is trying to stop that child from doing so, but this doesn't happen. Why? This is one of the major problem in children. They do not listen. They keep doing things. The early stages of life, The limbic system is the first thing that develops, and then comes the prefrontal cortex. The limbic system is more like an animal behavior where they do anything they want and nobody can stop them. If they want to do a certain thing, they'll do it, and you cannot even stop them. They'll fight for it. They'll argue. They'll be stubborn, like they won't move, and you keep doing it, but they won't listen. This impulsivity is also shown in the very beginning stages of life, where right after birth there is a change in the genetic expressions, why the child is so stubborn, and it also grows them into more stubborn. As they keep growing, they don't even listen. The mother is fed up with the child, and they just feel like, I don't need the child, or I'm a failed mother. I couldn't do more with my parenting. This is not the problem. The problem is with the genetic expression. This can be changed, but it needs a little help from the counseling centers that can give them a little help to, stop them from doing things. This takes time, but once the expression starts to change, if they do those tasks that are more listening tasks than not listening tasks, then this can be changed. But why this all happens, we'll try and understand at a deeper level from here. I'm going to quickly wrap up from here now. I'm not going to take much more time. So, as you can see from here, that the children are prone to addictions, yes, due to impulsivity and the early development of the limbic system. Dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine are major components of addictions and stubbornness, unwilling to change. This limbic system in the child, if you see dopamine, they will not change their expressions. Why? I'll explain you why this all happens in the early childhood, like when the child is small and they're just learning to walk or move around. And if the parents forget about being overprotective, if the parents leave them and the children does anything they want, there are two factors involved now that I'm going to make you explain. The first component is that if the child is kept as it is and they'll do anything they want, then that dopamine spikes in them and make them feel good about what they're doing. So when that point of what they're feeling good, and if you don't stop them at a very early age, and as they keep growing, then in the early slide I showed you that the child was stubborn and did not listen, because the child is listening to that dopamine spike more than you did not stop them at the very early age of not doing this. So now they're finding it good and they're feeling good when they're doing that activity. They're super excited, their impulsivity increases, because in the childhood, maintenance of that discipline didn't happen. So they did not listen, and now they're not even listening more. So we need to change that wiring of that brain. So this is the reason why you need counseling, to rewire the brain of that stubbornness. This will take time, because from 0 to, let's say, 2 years, 3 years, or maybe 4 years, they did the same thing. And now you realize that it's gone stubborn. They need help. So that's where I'm saying in 2, 3, 4 years, they've done all of this. The child needs counseling. The child needs better performance of the cognitive functions. So we need to rewire the brain of a child. And this will take time. Both the parents and the counseling, they need to work together to get them rid of that part of the dopamine that is increasing inside day by day. Now, how do you know that is increasing the dopamine in them? If you hold the child when they're doing that activity, they'll go wild. Excessive release of dopamine, they'll go wild. Don't do this. And they'll kick you, they'll push you, they'll shout, they'll do whatever it can, they'll hold something. That is because excessive release of that pleasure. They're feeling good. That is why this is happening. Now, part two. What can we do apart from this? If you spike dopamine in learning and memorizing, please remember this is what I'm saying. In learning and memorizing, if you spike dopamine, there'll be interest in learning and they'll show a lot of interest in understanding. Parents need to understand at a very early age. They cannot just make them sit and learn. Because children are also connected to their mothers, especially with their mothers. If the mom is not working like a home mom, like housewife, and they have children, then the housewife, if they just keep them and they just say, learn, they keep the book and they'll go inside. They'll go to the kitchen, they'll do something. So while they're learning, they're in the kitchen. So that activity, if they were doing something non-productive in that activity, the brain will recognize that. How? Because of that vision. They watched you going, the brain switches back to non-productivity. So the child will do that non-productive activity again because they recognize that activity. You go to the kitchen, they'll become non-productive. So if that happened during the non-productive, and if you do that activity in productivity, then they're not going to listen. So what you need to do is, during the activity of productive activity, the parents need to sit with the child and they need to do something fun to make them learn. You cannot just put up that mobile phone in front of them and say, no, okay, watch this, you're feeling good, and then no, don't do that. They're prone to that connection. If you will show that fun, the child will laugh. The child will love to do that activity. Because there is a connection between special bond between mother and child. So the school, the counseling department, the school needs to perform a better communication between the child and the mother. If the counseling department will start to bring the mother and child closer, then the home environment, the child will start to listen. So the activity is done in front of the counseling department where the child and the mother are brought together and they're having fun and learning. Then going back home, the child will listen to their mothers and they'll start to act that way because there's a connection between the mother and the child. And that's what the bond needs to be increased at this time. This is neuroscience, which is why I'm saying this. The counseling department needs to get the child and the mother together and give them fun activities about learning things, both of them together. So when the bond increases, they'll go home. Then the mother can also teach the child. The bond will increase. The more they do that, and the more it's going to increase fun and learning between mother and the child. It's okay if they don't have a father, then the father and the child. It's even better when, if you want, then you can also bring in father and mother together. If the child loves father and mother, then get them together and then have the child and then give them fun activities that way they can learn together and they can increase bond together. It's a great activity to, when they go home, the child will listen to their parents and they will learn more. So now that we've learned all of this, what are we supposed to do in the end? What are we supposed to learn? Now we've come to the final stage. This is about almost 50 minutes of videos that passed. Now I'm come to the end stage. This is neuroscience and I'm going to dive deep into children's as well. My part of my explanation was to make it simpler for you and for the children, but my research is different than what I say, because research means it bounces off the head, because I'm talking about X chromosomes, Y chromosomes, modification in the genes expressions, brain cells, then protein types, neurochemicals. That is a different thing. And to make it this simpler, I have to crack my head. It's never easy, because from science to simpler words, I have to break my head. And that is why I say that I've come to the end stage now. Let me make you understand more on all of this. In the last stage, a very, very last stage, that you need to understand what it is all about. So what else can you do in the end? As you can see, communication between parents and kids, very, very important. Put them into challenging questions when they're at home. Do some fun activities about name, place, something like recall of certain words, where everybody sits together. They're playing a game of words. That's a very good thing to do with them. Then teach them about something like chess, game of chess. That's also good. Then, one thing that really, really works with the children is when parents are playing games with children. That works pretty well. So the communication between parents and kids are very important. The very most important is give them information on limitation of gadgets. Please, parents should play a role of a role model if they want the children not to use their gadgets most of the time. If they're sitting to eat, please take away the gadgets. If you're talking to your kids, then they should not look into mobile phone. They should look at you and they should talk. So the limitation of mobile phone should be explained to the children's, and also the dark side of gadgets as well. Then comes freedom of express emotions. Children should be able to express their emotions to their parents. This is very, very important. Children should be given that exposure to talk and to give whatever they're feeling. If they're feeling something really bad, they should be able to express it and talk to their parents. This is very, very important at the given time, that facial expressions should be thought. When they're stressed, they should breathe. Teach them breathing exercises when they're stressed. When they're crying, teach them breathing exercises so they can breathe. You also breathe along with the child, so they'll have a better understanding. They'll also feel good that you're doing, especially mothers. When the mothers do that, the children are more connected to mother than father. So the mother does it, then the child follows it. So please do that. Then comes learning habits. Very, very important at a very young age. Children should be learned about habits. Good habits and bad habits. Both should be learned, not just good habits. Why bad habits are bad habits, why good habits are good habits. They should be learned. Then comes do not abuse the child. Not in school, not at home. Anybody abuses, it's going to trigger their brain functions are going to be really bad and abrupt. It won't develop pretty well. At least till the age of 10 years to 12 years. Please do not do it. Or even if you never do it, it's better. Always sit down, talk, and make them explain. Sit down, talk, and make them explain. If they don't understand by you, then take help of counseling department. They will explain. But don't do it with yourself that they're not explaining, I'm going to start to beat them. If they don't listen, you're stressed, then you're going to beat up your child. So maintain a level of calmness in you. You also have to need to do a self-work as a parent, that I should de-stress my body and I should stay calm. Seek help of counseling till the age of 12 years. If the child is still 12 years, say take counseling till those years, because you need extra help as a parent. Not everything you can do alone. Counseling is very important for parents. If they have a young child, they should seek counseling. counseling to a child specialist. That you get them in school. Counselors are also in school. Take help and do your job. That's all I can say here. Neuroscience has nothing to do with counseling. So if you come to me, then I will start to dig into their functions than counseling. So that's not my job. I'm sorry. But if there is any development disorders, then neuroscience. Then the investigation begins to understand their functionality of the brain and the gene expressions and what are the problems, to solve that problem and to maintain the level of cognition. That's why neuroscience comes in. So you can do whatever you can possibly to build a children's life. Very, very important. Do not abuse the child, even in school, not in home. If the teachers are abusing the child, one last thing, try and talk to the principal of the school. Do not abuse the child. If the teachers are getting frustrated and if they don't understand, the children is not understanding, then the teacher should go to the counseling department and talk to them, so the counseling department will take care of this. But do not abuse the child, please. The developing stage, the abusing to a child will have lesser cognition functions. They'll further develop into some other major problems as well in life. Self-growth stops, so don't do it. So I'm going to end here. I'm going to come back more in the future about children. So 60 minutes of videos, I'm tired. So your mental health is important in a family. God bless you all, and may you have an abundant, sweet life. Sending you so very much love, light, and healing. Hare Krishna.